know how people surf, whatever.
Right.
But there is something beautiful about that, because I think it captures the idea that you can choose to access this thing that is like where you can touch freedom, you can touch beauty and your own kind of power and your own. Of course, as I said earlier, I can't remember anything. My brain is so fried. I can't remember things. I can't remember words. But for me, I really, as I was reading your book, I really saw the parallels with Barbarian Days, because I just saw this, like, the idea of a memoir, like your life, you go through all these things in life, and surfing is this kind of point of access to see all these kinds of rites of passage, and to kind of keep the hours through almost the lens of the ocean of surfing. So beautiful. And this idea of yearning, right? In the way that waves have that undulation, and it just keeps repeating, and it changes, but it constantly has the same flow, right? With the tides, it comes back and forth in the same way you guys just kept going back. And one of the moments that I've enjoyed so much, both with your book and his book, is that you both would be challenged in some way at a break or whatever in surfing, but you just keep going back, and you're like, what are you doing? Why do you keep going? And you keep doing it, but there's something that just keeps bringing you back, this yearning, this thing, the Holy Grail that you're trying to get. And then in the meantime, life just happens to hit these notes, and it's just so beautiful, like really tender. And then also on top of that, other than the lyricism and everything, I really appreciated all the detail, like all the detail of Rockaway history, of even your surf terminology, of even your meteorology, like all like the techniques, like everything about it was just spot on.
And
things that I didn't know.
Skillfully done, because so often it can get done wrong in the from a less skilled writer. And the way you capture it, you sound credible, but also you explain it in such a way that a layman, anyone can understand it, which is really appreciative.
And also someone who knows more, like to hear it in a different way. Like for me, I was like, oh, wow. Like I learned a lot just hearing how you kind of put it together.
Absolutely.
So clearly.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, it was fun. The most fun part of the fun for me in doing the book actually was learning filling in the details of the Rockaway history that I didn't know.
I love that. Yeah.
Kind of spending day after day in the map room at the library.
So cool.
I mean, it's just such a rich and interesting place. Like so much has gone on in that tiny little space, over the centuries. But also the literary tradition was really fun to Jack London and Twain and just like all the people who have been captivated by surfing. That was also just that cultural history I thought was really, really fun to get in there.
Well, that's a very interesting, particularly like the Jack London stuff, and how he came to Hawaii and sailed from, San Francisco to Hawaii and was introduced to surfing, and George Freeth and all of that stuff was really well documented in the book, which was great. And very, that stuff is... It's funny because those writers created the archetype for so many surfers in general over the history. You can see the DNA in Jack London's writing, in some of the big wave surfers all the way to Laird Hamilton, basically.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that so much.
Jack London's wife also, was very influential, and she wrote something that was very interesting and also is pervasive in surfing, is like this Paradise Lost. When she went back to Hawaii after, so many years and saw the development, and the way she writes about it is very much how surfers look at certain breaks over a certain amount of time. I'm sure by you talking to old-timer Rockaway people being like, oh, it used to be better in this day, or the sandbar was better, or, it wasn't so crowded. And it's so funny, like how that keeps... that narrative keeps repeating over and over every generation.
Everywhere. I mean, I find myself doing it now.
I know, right?
I have my own version, and I'm not an old timer, right? But I have my own version. It's like, man, when I first started here, you could come out at dawn, and there wouldn't be anybody else there. Now there's like 50 people. And
I used to be able to park on your block. I can't park anywhere near your block now.
Well, that's a funny thing. Like I look at like a lot of people who are fighting for for a lot of inclusion in surfing, right? And I look at it and I'm like, well, 10 years ago, there was a similar kind of movement in New York also. There was more women surfing at a certain point than before. And then about 10 years on, they get kind of crusty and salty and like, man, should have seen it 10 years ago.
Right.
And it's funny, like surfers have a habit of doing this. Doesn't matter what you are. Over time, you remember fondly of a certain past period because it captures a certain moment for you.
That's exactly right. Right. I mean, that's sort of the function of nostalgia, right? It's like it's back when you discovered something. But I would say that I think this is also, I mean, I know New York, so this could be true in other cities too, but it's like New Yorkers are like that too, right?
Totally.
About everything. Like, remember when that great coffee shop was there and now it's this and so.
It's I think for surfers at least, I've experienced that in other places as well, where they've they harken back to a certain time period or love to show their status by the remembrance of a certain time period.
Right.
Oh, I was in Uluwatu before the stairs, and all this sort of
You're
stuff.
like, that sucks for you. Wow.
And so
it's
definitely, I find that we have that issue, and it's funny because I think Jack London's wife helped set that stage in some ways for surfers.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting.
don't know. I think, nostalgia, I think about, it's just, I think our resistance to change maybe because things change so fast and we're just trying to hold on to something which is kind of antithetical to what we do as surfers, right?
Right.
We love it because there's nothing to hold on to really. Or we are trying to hold on. Maybe that's the lure. That's why we keep going back because we're trying to get that thing
first
and
high.
get closer and get that thing and you
You're always chasing the dragon.
It's that feeling though, right? It's like you remember the feeling of the last best wave you surfed and you want that back again.
Right. And that's why when we can't, we also read and watch films. And that's why I absolutely enjoyed this book because
Shop.
there's nothing
Shop for another wetsuit I don't
New
need.
boards. Feel the rails of a board.
Like a well-written surf book is such a joy to read.
Oh, thank
and that's
you.
that's what this book was for me. And I know for Tyler, him listening to it.
Thank you.
There were certain points where I heard your emotions, and just captured me. It was really good. You read it very well.
Thank you. Yeah, there were a couple of places where I had to stop.
I could hear the quivering in your voice.
Where it's like, I think it was mostly stuff around my mother.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting. I will say that if I write another book, I don't think I would do the audiobook unless it's this personal, right? That's one of the reasons that I did it. But when I was reading that, I was like, wow, some of these sentences are long.
You're like, I got to take a breath. Hold on a sec.
Like, they look good on paper, but man.
Wow, that's great. That's great. I'm like, I want to volunteer to direct the film. So if you, if you know anyone who's looking to direct, they're looking for directors, just throw my name in the pot.
I mean, the question is, who are you going to give to be the surf expert on the beach? For all that. Which of your surf instructors?
That's interesting. That's an interesting question.
Because there's going to have to be someone who's teaching Kerry Washington. I'll throw my hat in the ring. I won't say no.
Look at
if
us,
you say
we're
yes.
such whores. We're just like, here you are on the show, and we're just going to put you on the spot. So we're just trying to get some jobs out of this.
I do want to mention, like, what I really loved, because it's kind of personal, is Tim Hill.
Yeah.
And being mentioned in this book. Tim, for our listeners who may not know him, he was a Rockaway stalwart who had been there for decades and started the skate park there and was just an integral part of the community. And he had passed away about 2 years ago. And just to hear him and to hear certain inflections in his voice from your, your writing, just really, and just his generosity. It really touched me. And I got goosebumps right now, I mean,
he was a special guy. I mean, it really, and he also helped start the community garden, right? Which is still just gives back to the community just so much. But yeah, that he was one of the just really welcoming people in Rockaway, right? Made me feel like I was part of the community, he and Kiva both. So, and then, Kiva literally rescued me from the swirling waters
with a stick.
Of Hurricane Sandy, crazy.
With a stick. What was sort of hilarious about it, I laughed even at the time that, when I came in and she, rescues me with a stick, and she's like, she was all excited. And she was like, I saw how to do it on TV. And I was just like, if I didn't love her already, that just cemented it. I was like, this woman is awesome. And yeah, so she and Tim, hosted me that night.
It was
something.
It was great. Like I've always loved his demeanor, and I loved how accepting he was, and how he really was community oriented. And I always felt like wanted to have part of that. Like I was like, I learned from watching him a bit. So thank you. It was great to have to hear that voice and be reminded of him.
Yeah,
I think that is kind of like the upside of surfing, right? The tribalism, the positive side of it is this intense sense of community and how we do look out for each other. And it's like always so nice to go to the beach and run into people that, it's, you never have to make a plan. You're going to run into someone somewhere. Right. You could be in a break in another country and you run into someone, so. And then this idea of like, oh, you're my people. Like it's such a good feeling. Like, now that you're a veteran resident of Rockaway, like, don't you feel sorry for people who don't have such a sense of community? I feel like
I do.
I by default, because I'm there all the time, feel it. But it's such a weird thing to imagine that other people don't have this sense of community.
Right.
Like maybe it's around their kids' school, parents or something.
Well,
but
I think that's what happens, right? So that a lot of people do develop community around their kids' school or life or their neighborhood. But the thing about, and that's fine. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with that. It's like fine. Community is good wherever you can find it. But the difference is that when you have a community that's built around a specific activity in a specific place, and that is both a challenging activity and a challenging place, but also a wonderful activity and a wonderful place. Right? It's like we've all given up whatever we have to give up to or deal with to live here and surf here, and we love it. And so you have an immediate sense of common ground with those people, which is I think a little different than community built around just a neighborhood or a school.
They don't have whales.
They don't have whales.
Environment.
Well, there's this level of commitment. I think you get accepted in this tribe, in this community by the level of commitment that you put towards it, like showing up and surfing every day, or taking lessons all the time and constantly showing up. And it's like after a while you're gonna break through and get accepted in. I think, particularly in surfing, I feel like that happens in a lot of places where a lot of the beginners who keep knocking at the door and keep coming will eventually become accepted. And once you're accepted, it's pretty gratifying.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I felt like, as soon as I moved and was, on the boardwalk at first for a lot, watching, tentative, and then in the water, it was almost like I had because I'd made the commitment to living in Rockaway, which, I had a job in Midtown, and that's a long commute, and it's, and we don't have all the great services and conveniences that many other neighborhoods have. But it was almost like, well, you've committed to be in this place, so I'm going to help you, right? Because you obviously, really, really want this.
Yeah, and then you saw that with Sandy.
Absolutely.
It is incredible, Although one thing I felt was a little glanced on, forgive me. No, is like the work that Davina and Brandon did with the Rockaway Beach Surf Club and the hipsters that you say in some portion of the book, because they became helpsters. And the only reason I say it is because I helped organize a lot of them too. And I felt like there was something there that the Brooklyn surf community or the New York City surf community came out in full force. And I felt like I was waiting to hear more of that in the book.
Fair enough. fair enough.
You know, but still, like, I mean, the community was totally amazing after that.
Yeah.
I thought.